Okay, sorry, I'm running a little bit late tonight. It's 8 o'clock, a little bit after 8 o'clock, and we're continuing the Parsha series. So we are now into the second Torah reading in the book of Exodus. And we are now reading, it's a little bit bright here. We're now reading, we're getting into Moses and Aaron are coming to Pharaoh to ask Pharaoh to redeem the Jewish people. So, as you know, last week's Torah reading, just a quick recap, we had Moses who grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, and at the age of about 18, he goes out of the palace. He sees the Egyptian and the Jew fighting with each other, and he sides with the Israelite, with the Jew that is his brother, and the injustice that's going on, and he kills the Egyptian. There's a Torah reading that says that he kills the Egyptian inside of him, the side that was steeped in the influences that he had in the palace of Pharaoh. And he kills that. He kills what's in him, the negative forces that are in him. He kills the Egyptian, the literal Egyptian. He buries him in the sand. And then a little bit later, we hear of him interceding between two Israelites who are fighting. And based on what they say to him, are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? He fears for his life that Pharaoh is going to come after him. He runs away. And we spoke about this last week. This is last week's Torah portion, where he ends up in the home of Jethro in Midian. He marries Zipporah, and he has the incident last week of the burning bush, where he sees this burning bush. He's walking by, he's shepherding the sheep, and he has the experience of being told and asked, literally told by God, that you are going to be the one to go to Pharaoh. He complains. He's considered to be so humble and so unsure of himself that he doesn't think that he's the right man for the job. God says, you are the right man for the job. And actually he says that I have a speech impediment, that it's impossible for me to be the leader who's going to bring out the Jewish people because I can't speak properly. And I heard a mystical teaching about that Moses, as we know, Moses was born. When he was born, the whole room lit up. There was this huge soul that came from the higher realms. It sort of literally just came into his body. And when he was born as a baby, the whole room lit up. They knew that his parents, who are not named until this week's Torah portion, recognized there was something very special about this child because the whole room lit up. And he oh, sorry, I lost my thought. So he anyway, so here's Moshe. So he doesn't have the speech. Why doesn't he have the speech? So there's a medrash that talks about why he doesn't have the speech, but another way to understand why he doesn't have the words, he can't articulate. He says, I'm not the charismatic leader who can go and advocate for the Jewish people. I can't go to Pharaoh and speak eloquently. I'm not that kind of a person. And God says, you are the right person to do the job. But one of the mystical teachings as to why he was unable to formulate the words properly is because he was so spiritual. He lived in a spiritual realm, and being sort of in that spiritual space to limit his understanding and bring it down into words was beyond him. He couldn't take the reality that he knew, that he had experience of, and like condense it down into word form. So testament to the extreme spiritual nature of Moses is the inability that he has to condense his reality and condense his understanding of the world and condense it all down into these finite words. And he couldn't do that. So that's another way of understanding why it was that he felt that he was unworthy to be the one to bring the Jewish people out. God says, no, you are the man, and I'll bring Aaron into the mixture for you. He can speak for you. You'll go together, these two brothers, without sibling rivalry. In other incidents, we talked about Ephraim and Manasseh. Without sibling rivalry, here's Aaron, the older brother, Moses, the younger brother, and together they go on this mission to bring the Jewish people out. So just while we're on the theme of brotherhood, Moshe and Aaron being these two brothers who have the task of bringing out the Jewish people. So when they're referred to in the Torah, they're often interchangeable. Like sometimes it's Moses written first, and sometimes it's Aaron written first. They're not always Moses first and then Aaron. And one of the understandings that I read about that is because they both actualize the potential that they had. So our greatness isn't measured against somebody else's greatness. Our greatness is measured against our own greatness. Like, we have this amazing potential to do things. Hopefully we actualize some of that. But Moses and Aaron were able to actualize the potential that they each had. So it might look different and it might be different. Like Moses might be, we say Moses is a prophet like no other. There will never be a prophet like Moses ever again. But it doesn't mean that Moses is quote unquote better. It means that Moses was able to actualize his potential. And we understand from some of the commentators that Aaron was also able to actualize his potential. And the two of them, when they went together to Pharaoh and they lead the Jewish people, that they are both equally able to manifest the potential that each one of them had. So it wasn't a competition like, this is my job and I want your job. It was like, okay, we understand our two roles. These are the roles that we are supposed to have. Your role, my role. And together we're going to bring out the Jewish people, and I'm not competing to be you and you're not competing to be me. And Moses and Aaron epitomize that. They personify that. They're able to support each other and actualize themselves within the space of being in relationship with each other, and obviously with God, and with Miriam, who comes into the mix and bringing the Jewish people out. So this is all the prelude to this week's Torah portion. So Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh, and the work of the Israelites increases after the first Moses and Aaron going to Pharaoh to ask for Jewish people to be released. The workload increases, and the Jewish people have less confidence in Moses and Aaron. Like, okay, you came and now there's more work, and like, what, so what good are you? But I think one of the things to hear here is that in last week's Torah portion, where Moses and Aaron come and they tell the Jewish people, we're going to bring you out, there's a certain level of, okay, this is, maybe there's hope, and maybe there's a glimmer of hope. We're going to get out. We're going to be free. The inalienable right to be free. Do we have a right to be free? And Moses and Aaron are coming and saying, God promises we're going to bring you, that he's going to bring you out. God will bring you out. And the people have hope. And then based on them going to Pharaoh, the workload increases and the people are less able to hear what Moses and Aaron have to say to them. And one of the differences between the first time that Moses and Aaron come to the people and the second time is that not only are they being told they're going to be freed, but the second time they're being told they're going to be freed in order to become a people unto God, unto this God. Who is this God? And this is where we pick up this week's Torah portion. So it begins, the name of the Torah portion is called Parshat Va'eira. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Hashem. I am Hashem. I appeared, this is Va'eira, I revealed myself to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And when I revealed myself to them, I revealed myself, he says in the Torah, as Kel Shaddai. That is the name of the God that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob interacted with. So we spoke before last week. The book is called Shemot. It's the book of names. And we spoke about how names are a manifestation of our essence. Like a person's name has a certain linkage to who we are in existentially deep down. The names of God are ways in which we experience God. So there are many names of God because we experience God in many different ways. So I heard a parable that, or maybe it's just an interesting way to understand this concept. So, I am a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a nurse, I'm a whatever I am. I'm a lot of different things. And so I have a different title depending on who I am in relationship to. So if I'm in relationship to my children, I'm mommy. And if I'm in relationship to my husband, I have a different name. Or if I'm in relationship to my friends, I'm Melissa, etc., etc. So the people with whom we interact have different names for us, nicknames and blah, blah, blah. So those are ways, different ways. It's the same me, but the way in which I interact with different people is different. And so perhaps the name can reflect that. So too, obviously in people it's a very limited experience of naming, but when God manifests himself and when we have an interaction with God, then there's different names that represent the way in which God represents himself to us, or way in which he reveals himself to us, or way in which we experience God. So Kel Shaddai is the name of the God that appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but with my name Hashem, which is spelt with a yud and a hey and a vav and a hey. That we say is Hashem, so I'm going to use the word Hashem. But it's spelt with a yud and a hey and a vav and a hey. So by my name Hashem, I did not make myself known to them. Okay, so here we have God saying, the ancestors, the Avot, the forefathers and the foremothers, they knew me as Kel Shaddai. But now I'm going to reveal myself to you, Moses, my new manifestation of who I'm going to be in relationship to you, Moses, and to the Jewish people who are coming. I'm going to bring you out of Egypt, and I'm going to be this God, Hashem, Elohim. That's the God I'm going to now. This is the Midah. This is the attribute that you're going to experience me. So I want to dwell on this a little bit. So the God that appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were a family. They were people. They were individuals. They sought out God. They desired a relationship with God. They sought him out. And God appeared to them as a God of justice, the God who created the world with justice, with a limitation, right? So I'm going to create the sun and the moon, but there's going to be a limit to how far away the sun is from the earth, and there's going to be sort of like rules about how I, God, as Kel Shaddai, I'm going to operate in the world like this. Where he's had limits. There's limits to how he manifests himself. God manifests himself, and the forefathers and the foremothers interacted with God in a way that was very much. They came to a conclusion and an understanding that there was a God in the world, and they were unshakable in that faith. That faith of knowing that there was a God called Kel Shaddai was unshakable, and that we've inherited somewhere in our nation, that kind of steadfast understanding that God is with us, whether each one of us individually believes that, but as a nation there's a relationship that we have to God which is that has as a foundation an unshakable faith that God is with us, and God is in relationship to us, that he's a God of justice. There's justice in the world. Like Jewish people stand for in relationship to God who is just. Okay, so here were the individuals, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, and Rebecca, and Rachel, and Leah, who they wanted to have a relationship with God. They sought it out, and they were private people who had this loving relationship with God. So now we have a different paradigm. We have Moses, who God essentially seeks out Moses, right? He's walking by, he's shepherding his sheep, and here's the burning bush. God comes to Moses and reveals himself to Moses and says, you're going to take the Jewish people out, and I'm now going to reveal myself in a different way, right? I'm no longer going to be Kel Shaddai, known to you as Kel Shaddai. I'm going to be known to you as Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, meaning I'm going to be a God of mercy. I'm going to be a God that fulfills the promise that I gave to Abraham, that you would be enslaved and would come out and I would redeem you. I'm going to be the God, the Redeemer. The letters of Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey are also represent God who was, God who is, and God who will be. So there's an everlasting, eternal nature to our new understanding of who God is. God is beyond a time frame, above time, transcends time, is eternal. There's an ongoing relationship with God that never ends. So this God who is going to redeem the Jewish people, who is in control of nature, not just created nature, but is in control of nature. Obviously, we're going to now, in this week's Torah portion, talk about the first 7 of the 10 plagues, which were miraculous God's involvement in nature, right? So anything that went against the law of nature, which God put into place, anything which changes those laws of nature and makes them different is quote unquote a miracle, even though perhaps everything is a miracle. But, there's a certain kind of order to the world. When the order gets upset, we say that's a miracle. And God is in control of nature such that he can control what happens and what is. And God is unstoppable. We can't stop God. He can't be stopped. When he puts a plague, into force, our ability to stop that is limited, right? But God can do what He wants to do, and He does what He wants to do, and He has as we know, we're going to have 10 plagues. But before the plagues even begin, He's telling Moses, I'm coming to you, you're going to the Jewish people, and I want you to represent me, and you are going to represent me as a God of mercy, a God who's going to manifest Himself through nature. I'm going to be an exposed God. I'm going to come out of hiding. I'm no longer going to be hidden. I am the oneness. There's a oneness to this whole idea. And not only am I going to be the God of mercy, I'm going to be the God of the Jewish people. I'm going to pull out this nation, one nation out of another. It's a miracle. There's going to be miraculous extraction of the Jewish people out of the nation of Egypt. It's likened unto a forceps delivery of a baby. Maybe not, let's not imagine a human baby by a forceps, but maybe a cow baby, a calf being born, like literally pulled out of the mother, extracted with force. Literally put your hand in and pull out. That's perhaps the visual for God pulling out the Jewish people out from the midst of the Egyptians, literally putting His hand in and pulling out the Jewish people. That's what's going to happen, and it's going to happen with miracles. He's going to suspend nature. He's going to undo nature. We're going to go through that, and so Moses, who is more of an intellectual, perhaps, than the Avos, than the Imaos, that our forefathers and our foremothers operated from a place, we understand, of emotion. That was their MO, was to be have an emotional relationship to God. And Moses has a more intellectual relationship with God. So that's, perhaps you can argue one way or the other, but let's put that on the table. Many of the commentators speak about this as Moses being a lot more intellectual, and so he questions God. Because after he came to Pharaoh, everything got worse. It got worse. The people had to collect more straw, and they had to do more things, and it was just, so he questions God, like he wants to understand, God, what are you doing? Like, how is this possible? And so God says to him, let me just read you a little bit more. So God says, I'm going to make myself known to you as Hashem, Yud and Hey Vav Hey, and I have established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojourning. So we're promised again the land of Israel. I have heard the groan of the children of Israel, whom God enslaves, and I have remembered my covenant. So this groaning, I think it's really interesting to think about. That the Jewish people, went at the beginning of their slavery, was a silence. There was a silence to their enslavement. It happened sort of slowly, and it didn't really understand what was happening to them, and it kind of like went into it. We've heard about this also vis-a-vis the Holocaust, and the way the Jews were like went downhill, kind of like in the beginning. It wasn't like so clear what was going to happen, and there was a certain silence. People were not crying out. It wasn't so clear where they was going. And now we're in a place where it really is severe. They're really oppressed, and it's really harsh. And there's a groaning. So many ways we have to communicate, and this groaning is an aspect of prayer. Like we perhaps are very limited in our Siddur, because there's the prayers that we have that are written for us, but like take yourselves outside of the prayer book and talk to God and sing to God and cry to God and shout to God and groan or moan or wail, or like these different ways in which we have to express ourselves, take our insides and bring them out, and have a true relationship with God, which is predicated on my insides, not on my outsides, not just the kind of like the facade of reading words and not connecting to the inside, but the work of being able to actually understand, like I'm connecting my insides to my outside, I'm connecting my inside to God. The Jewish people were groaning under this workload. So it's interesting, really, isn't it, when we talk about Moses being able to speak, and God cures his speech, but his speech is because he's in these higher realms and he can't quite find the words to bring it down. So, we have a few places where we're trying to understand what it means to be able to use our vocalizations to kind of get in touch with ourselves on the inside, and to connect with something outside of ourselves, and connect with God, connect with each other. So the people of Israel are groaning, and And God says to Moses, go to the children of Israel and tell them, I am Hashem. I am Hashem. I'm coming out of hiding. I'm here, and I'll take you out from the burdens of Egypt, and I will rescue you from their service. I will redeem you, and I will take you to me for be a people, and you shall know that I am Hashem, who takes you out from the burdens of Egypt. So we read about this on the Seder night. God gives us 4 ways in which he's going to bring us out, the 4 modes of redemption, which are paralleled in our Seder to the 4 cups of wine. We have 4 cups of wine, which represent the 4 different redemptive processes and energies that we go through. So what are we doing? We're being taken out. God says, I'm going to take you out. He's promising the people, I'm going to take you out where there's no hope. There's no hope. The Jewish people had no hope. Right? They did have hope, then they didn't have hope, and God's saying, I'm going to take you out. I'm going to give you hope. And I think just a sidebar comment to think about in our times or in our experiences where we have times where we feel like there's no hope, like we're really at the bottom. Have you ever hit rock bottom, and can you ever get up from that place of rock bottom? And thank God we do. Many times we do. I guess not everybody does, but hopefully we do. And so if ever you go back, or you see your children, or you see other people going into a place that's really dark, and really like say, okay, I'm gonna sit with you in that pit. I'm gonna be with you, and it's not gonna last forever. It's really not gonna last forever. There's going to be an up, and when you go up, the up is going to be so much sweeter. It's going to be so sweet because you were down. Like the inverse relationship, as far down as you go is as high as you can go. That the joy that you can achieve after having a low, not that you never ever go back to that low, but that the high is sweeter because you've experienced a low and you understand the difference. You understand that you're where you are. You understand the miraculous nature of the goodness that befalls us. So that's cool. So God's going to take us out. He's going to bring us. He's going to save us. He's going to rescue us. He's going to redeem us with this outstretched arm, free us. There's no going back. There's no going back. And he's going to take us to be a people. We're going to become God's people. We're going to be led into the desert. We're going to follow God into the desert. We're going to follow Moses, Aaron, and Miriam into the desert. We're going to be given the Torah at Mount Sinai. We're going to be given the land of Israel, right? So one of the other explanations given as to why the Jewish people were a little skeptical when the second promise of redemption came about was because it wasn't just, I'm going to free you so you can be quote unquote free. I'm going to free you so that you have the freedom to then be in relationship to God, right? So perhaps at that point where they were enslaved to Pharaoh, the thought of being then kind of quote unquote, have responsibilities and obligations to anybody or anything might be a little bit maybe not sound so great at that point, right? So at that point, yes, God's going to bring us out. That sounds great. But now I'm going to go out. I'm going to have other responsibilities and other things I have to do. So perhaps that had a little edge to what the Jewish people were like anticipating for their future. Either way, by the time all these plagues are over, they're very happy to be in relationship to God. But at this point, they don't know, right? God, they've been enslaved, they've been suffering. Like when we're suffering and we're in pain, we don't see God's hands, and then God says, "I'm going to bring you out." Well, okay, so bring me out. Like I want to be on the other side. I want to understand that. I want to know that. And I think when we go back to what we said about the forefathers and foremothers, how they put into our spiritual DNA an ability to have unshakable faith in God, that somewhere in us we have a faith in God, that it's all going to be good. So Moses says, I'll take you out. God says, I'll take you out to be people, and I'll bring you to the land that I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'll give it to you as an inheritance. I am Hashem. And Moses says so Moses complains with God, and he says, let me see if I can find it. I will redeem you, or take you for people, and should be God to me. You should know that I am Hashem, takes you out to bring you. So Moses spoke accordingly to the children of Israel, but they did not heed Moses because of shortness of breath and hard work. Because of shortness of breath and hard work, they were so enslaved, they were so downtrodden, they were so low, they didn't have any hope. Or that to go out and then have to follow the Torah and to follow God was maybe something that they also couldn't understand. They couldn't grasp that concept. So I heard Sivan Rahav Meir just gave a little shiur about this particular phrase of because of shortness of breath and hard work, and she likened it unto our lives. Shortness of breath and hard work, meaning, are we working all the time? Like, are we shortness of breath? Are we too scatty? Are we too busy making money or running to work or doing things that we don't take time to stop and to heed the voices the voices of truth, or to heed the voices of spirituality? Like, how do we stop, and how do we not fall into the trap of in our own world, obviously not like the Egyptians or people that are persecuted and oppressed. Thank God we're not in America. But we live busy lives, and we're running and here and there, and we're doing and we're going, and we've got lots of responsibilities perhaps, and we've got a lot to do. And do we take time that we're not having our own equivalent of shortness of breath and hard work? So she suggests 3 antidotes to shortness of breath and hard work in our day. One is Shabbat, that it's a time to stop. It's a time to take note. It is a redemptive moment, right? So we have our 6 days of work, and then we have our 1 day of stopping work. We have the end of oppression of the work week, let's say, and we get to that space. It's a little bit of the world come. It's a little bit of a break, a lot of a break. It's 25 hours of no electronics. It's 24 hours of being with other people and talking about spiritual things perhaps, and praying in the synagogue and eating nice meals and relaxing and sleeping and whatever we do on Shabbat. But it's not a rat race. We're not working, we're not creating, we're not buying things, we're not going to the supermarket and the post office and blah 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 blah. It's a cutoff. It's a day out, right? Pull out that day, a bubble of time that we're going through a work week. We're working. Perhaps like the Egyptians worked us. We work ourselves, and then we have a day of rest, and we have a day to stop. We have a day to say, I'm not going to continue 24/7, 7 days a week being of shortness of breath and hard work. I'm going to take this 1 day out every 6. The 7th day is always this 1 day out. That's one antidote. The other antidote is just to stop and to meditate and to take a breath and to maybe not be, maybe put your phone down for an hour a day, or meditate for 20 minutes or pray or whatever it is. Take some time each day to like mini stop, however you do that, so that you're not swept up all the time. And then the third one, she says, is to attach yourself to Torah, to wisdom, to learn something, to listen to Shia, to have a conversation with somebody that's a little bit transcendent, isn't about just the, what you're doing and logistical things and everyday things, but like can take you outside of the moment, and to have a conversation that takes you out, or to some activity that takes you out, or something that's Torah related, attached to Torah. So here's what I want to add. I want to go here. So here's where I want to go next. So when Aaron and Moses, they go to Pharaoh and they say, we're going to bring the people out and blah, blah, blah. And then Pharaoh says, who's your God? Like, I don't know this God. Who is he? And Aaron has a staff, like a stick, right? We talked about this before. And he throws the stick. He's holding the stick. Or Moses has the stick. Moses throws the stick down, and the stick becomes a snake. And then he picks up the snake, takes the tail of the snake, and he picks it up, and it becomes a staff. It becomes a stick again. So yes, the other magicians of Egypt can do the same trick, but I listened to a really interesting Shia that was talking about the Lubavitcher rabbi, and he, or the Al Shish, so there's a few different places where they talk about the difference between a stick and a snake. And many times in this week's Torah portion, the plagues come about with Moses or Aaron raising the stick or doing something with the stick. And here we have this example of Moses and Aaron coming to Pharaoh with a stick that turns into a snake. And then when they hold on to it, it comes back into a stick. So what's this stick and snake thing? So a stick obviously is hard, and it's solid, and it's straight, and it's up and down. And it's likened to the kind of like the straightness of our relationship to God, right? So God is truth, God is justice, God is mercy, God is faithful, God is like a stick, so to speak. Like it has a straightness to it. So something that's yashar, something that's straight, is predictable and knowable, and it doesn't waver. It has a straightness and a truth to it. A snake obviously is more windy and slithery, and it goes back and forth, and it doesn't go straight, right? It has sort of like that kind of wavy back and forth kind of an image to it. And so what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says is that when God manifests himself in the world, it's like a stick, it's straight. But as it gets lower and lower and lower and down into the more physical world, and it gets covered up with other things, then it loses its straightness, it loses its direction. We become unclear how to act, right? Our path is not so clear how to go, and it becomes more windy. We're not sure how to go, we're not sure. So it kind of is a removal of the divine connection, right? So divine connection is likened unto something that's straight. We understand, we know what to do. And the snake is something that is like trying to weave its way and trying to kind of take us off course and trying to like take us down the wrong path. And it has that kind of wiggly aspect to it. So when Moses is holding the stick, Moses who speaks to God face to face, Moses who has a direct connection, a direct communication from God, right? When he holds onto the stick is straight and solid. And when he lets go of the stick, it becomes a snake, right? So then we're fearful of snakes. Snakes are a little bit creepy and they're a little bit like scary and we're scared of it. But if you hold onto it, as Moses holds onto the snake, it goes back into a stick. So there's two messages that the Rebbe brings out there. One is, don't be afraid of the snake. The snake, whatever metaphorically the snake is, the snake could be something that you're fearful of, that you don't know what to do with, that you're a little bit fearful of. So don't be afraid, right? So something we shouldn't be afraid of. We shouldn't be afraid of something that is removed from God. We don't want to be afraid of that. So the antidote is to hold on to it, like attack it. Like if something is, you're fearful of it, don't run away from it. It's almost like that. Like I can't think of an example, but sometimes maybe there's something that we're fearful of, but if we actually confront it or if we actually talk about it, it sort of goes away. Like what was I so worried about, or what was I so fearful about, or maybe I can't think of an example. Maybe somebody else can help me with that. But you get the idea. And so if you hold on to it, you grab it. You grab that moment, and it turns back into a stick. Then you're connecting yourself back to something real. And what's real in the world? God's real in the world, and Torah is real in the world. Torah wisdom is real in the world. So if we attach ourselves to Torah wisdom, to God, good deeds and doing the right thing, doing on the right path, then we're going to be solid. But when we move ourselves further and further and further away, it becomes more like a snake, and we're fearful of it and we run away from it. Maybe the antidote is to hold on to it. So in a few weeks' time, there's a time in the desert where the Jewish people are attacked by snakes, and we'll read about it later when we get to that Torah portion. But the antidote, says God to Moses, is to make a copper snake and put it on a pole and hold it up. And when the people look up at the snake, this copper snake, and that's where it comes from on the medical alert bracelets that people wear. They have a snake around a staff. It comes from the Torah portion, Chukat, where they talk about that. So God says to Moses, take this pole and put this copper snake on top of that, hold it up, and the people will look up and they'll be cured of their plague that comes from these snakes. They'll be healed. And so obviously it's a kind of that's why it's used for healing on our bracelets, on those bracelets. But the idea is to look up, recognize that it's from God, right? So this stick represents God, and the snake represents distance from God. So here's Pharaoh, who's like distant from God, and here's Moses, who's connected to God. So hold on to Moses, because that's where your source of life is. That's where your source of infiniteness is and goodness is. That's where it is. Hold on over there, because once you let go of that, it's going to turn into a snake. So in this episode where Moses holds onto the staff, it's a stick, and he lets go, it becomes a snake, and then he holds onto it again, it turns back into a snake. That's the metaphor. That's the metaphor for us holding on to truth and wisdom and not letting go, because if you let go, it turns into a snake, and then we're fearful of that. We don't know what to do, and we're really like all at odds, and we're running this way and that. We're like, hold on to it. So Moses is complaining. He says, I don't understand. God, I don't understand. Since I've come to Pharaoh and asked for the Jewish people to be redeemed, their work has got worse, and it's become bad. It says, I think he uses the word bad. He says ever since I've come, it's now been harder for the Jewish people. I don't understand this. I don't know if I can find the quote exactly. And so God actually rebukes him for that. He says, he says, God, why have you mistreated the people? Why have you treated the people badly, like badly? And here we get back to that point, that idea, that unshakable faith that the mothers and fathers gave us, that God is good. And that's a fundamental belief that the Jewish people have, that underneath everything that we go through, underneath the hardships and underneath the traumas and underneath the enslavements and underneath everything, and the backbone of who God is in the world is good. Right, so we have faith that God is good, even in the Mitzrayim, even in the straits. Mitzrayim means to be constrained, even when we're limited, even when we're in a place where we can't see the goodness. There's a fundamental, foundational belief that God only does good. So again, we can't see it, but God only does good. So maybe one day, at the end of days, we'll see why this all had to happen. When we're going through it, we can't see it. We're in a world where we can't see it, but there is an underlying faith system that we have that says God only does good. So when Moses says to God, why are you doing bad with the people? He says, no, I don't do bad with the people. Like that. So he brings God to task. He brings Moses to task, not for questioning him, but for suggesting that what he's doing is bad, right? So I don't do bad. You might not understand it. You might understand my ways. You weren't here when, God says to Job, you weren't there when the world was created. Like, you have no idea. And even Moses, who says, show me your ways, God doesn't show him. Like, you can't even see me, says God to Moses. You can see the back of me. I'll pass by you and you'll see the back of me, whatever that means. But you can't see me. You can't know my ways. You can't know why there's suffering in the world. You just can't. But underlying it, you have to have faith that I'm good and it's all good, right? Even if it doesn't feel that way. All right. So this God, God says, I am God. I am God. Yud, Hey, Vav, I'm that God. Yud, Hey, and a Vav, and Hey, I'm that good, that's merciful and loving, and I can do anything. I can redeem you. I'm going to fulfill the promise I gave to Abraham to bring you out and to give you a land and to give you a Torah, and I'm going to perform these supernatural miracles. It's going to be amazing, and the whole world will know that God is God and that God is God, and there's only one God, and that's where we're heading. It's what we want. Like we say in a prayer called Aleinu, that the whole world is heading to the place one day where the whole world will recognize that there's one God, and God, this God, our God. So the Jewish people needed to desire freedom. They needed to want to come out. They were a little, maybe in the beginning, were a little bit too, like, not too, but I'm not blaming them or anything, but they like, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So in their slavery, they kind of were accustomed to their slavery. They were accustomed to the idolatry, which is kind of interesting. And they didn't, maybe they didn't want to be enslaved, but it was also a big leap for them who were immersed in the Egyptian culture, to let go of the idea of idolatry, and to cleave themselves and to connect themselves as one God. So that was another kind of evolution for the Jewish people. So God's coming out of hiding. He's manifesting himself as with a different name, right, which represents a different essence of him coming out into the world. From before it was as a Kel Shaddai, now it's Elohim, and he's going to bring them out. And we have these 4 ways in which he's going to bring us out. So here's where I want to now talk a little bit about the plagues, because I'm sure I'm going to actually run out of time. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the plagues, and let's talk a little bit about Pharaoh. So in this Torah portion, we have 7 of the 10 plagues. There's a lot to talk about the plagues, and we will not cover it. They're grouped 3, 3, and 3. They're grouped in a way in which they get warnings, and then they don't get warnings, in which Pharaoh's heart is hardened, Pharaoh's heart is strengthened. There's 2 different languages used in the Torah for the heart of Pharaoh. So in some places his heart is hardened, and in other places his heart is strengthened. And so there's a theological question that comes up as to how it could be that God hardens the heart of Pharaoh. Don't we have this huge principle that man has free will? and we all have free will, and free will is predicated on my ability to do whatever I want to do. So if God's coming along and he's hardening the heart of Pharaoh, then we're taking away Pharaoh's free will. So one of the answers, there's a lot spoken about this, but one of the ways to understand what God is doing, which I think is cool, and maybe you haven't heard this before, so I'm gonna share it with you, is that the word used when God, quote unquote, hardens Pharaoh's heart is to use the word machazek. He strengthens his heart, meaning when the plagues come and they're very devastating and they undo the natural world and the Egyptians are pained by the plagues, and they're very uncomfortable, they're very pervasive in the land, and they can't rest, and they can't live, and it's the Nile and all the water of the Egyptians turns to blood is the first plague. There's frogs everywhere in the second plague. There's lice, everything in the third plague. Like, they need these plagues to go away. They cannot function. And it says in the first 6 plagues, Pharaoh hardens his own heart. Like, he refuses to believe that there's another God. He will not do that. Like, he sees himself as God. He's the God. Like, somehow he made himself and he worships himself, and he kind of believes that. So he's in a great state of denial of like what's real, and he somehow rationalized things, and he's compulsive in his ability to keep repeating this hardening of his own heart. Like, I cannot go there. I'm like, it's not going to happen. It undoes everything that I stand for and what I believe in and what I know about myself, that I'm the God, and he believes this about himself. So it's got lots going on in terms of denial and rationalization, and his compulsion to continue to enslave the Jewish people, even with the plagues. The plagues come, the plagues go, there's warnings, there's no warnings. And after the 6th plague, then we hear the language of God strengthening Pharaoh's heart, meaning in order for the plagues, as they get more and more and more intense, in order for the plagues to not put Pharaoh into a place where he responds because he can't endure the plague, then his heart has to be strengthened so that he can still operate from a place of free will. If his heart wasn't strengthened, he would succumb because the plague is so egregious to him. He would just it's so fearful of what's happening to him that he'll say, sure, go away, but it's not really free will. He's responding to the fear of the plague. So God strengthens his heart so the fear of the plague doesn't affect his thinking, and he continues to deny that there's God. So does that make sense? So that in strengthening his heart, God is giving him the fortitude to endure the plagues and to continue to have the free will that God gives people. Like, if God makes Pharaoh's heart such that he's not going to be affected by the plague, then he can still decide to not let the people go and to still deny that there's a God. As soon as he's affected by the plague in a negative way, he's going to respond to the plague. So God hardens his heart, gives his heart courage to not be affected by the plague, such that he has the free will to decide what to do. Does that make sense? So hopefully that makes sense. So that kind of gives a different twist on what it means to be that his heart was hardened, or his heart was strengthened by God, so that his free will still could exist. So the 7th plague is super interesting. It's the plague of hail. And I love this because it's, maybe we have a heaven in the heavens, right? What's heaven? Shamayim. It's Shamayim. It's water and ice. It's water and fire. And these hailstones, it says in the Torah, are literally water with fire inside. That's what's coming out of the heavens, is this water. So I want to read this to you. So God predicts when it's going to happen. He says, I'm going to do this tomorrow. It's going to happen tomorrow. I'll rain a very heavy hail, such as has never been in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. And you shall gather in your livestock and everything you have in the field, and all the people and animals that are found in the field that are not gathered into the house, the hail shall descend upon them, and they shall die. And there was hail, and that Moses stretched out his staff towards the heaven, and heaven sent thunder and hail, and fire went earthward, and rain and God rained hail upon the land of Egypt. There was hail and fire flaming amid the hail, very heavy, such as never been in the entire land of Egypt from the time it became a nation. The hail struck in the entire land of Egypt, everything that was in the field from man to beast, all the grass of the field the hail struck, and every tree of the field it smashed. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. So this amazing hail. So first of all, we have Moses going outside the city. This is the first time where he brings a plague outside the city. That's very important to know. And in order to bring the plague, he puts his hand and the staff above the heavens. He goes up and stretch your hand above the heavens. Like this plague is coming from beyond. It's coming from the highest realms where Aish and Mayim, where water and fire exist up in the heavens, whatever that means. And it's coming down from this very high place where there's two entities, fire and water, that cannot exist together, right? They're antithetical. Fire and water can't exist together, except when God makes it that they can exist together in the higher heavens and in this hail, that's this bara that's sent down. It's fire and water together, and it says that they made peace, that fire and water made peace with each other. They were able to, quote unquote, to live together, to exist together. The fire and water could exist together, opposites, because God willed it to be that way. So here we have, it was interesting, I read something that, some of the Egyptians, crazy, after 6 plagues, this is the 7th plague, after the 6th plague, still there are Egyptians who deny God and don't listen and don't take their livestock into their homes. They build flimsy shelters, and part of what the fire did when it came down with the hail is that the fire burnt down all these flimsy shelters that the less believing Egyptians made for their cattle and their livestock, and so they all got burnt and destroyed by this fire that came down amidst the hail. But this idea of mixing together two opposites and having them, quote unquote, have peace together. And again, we human beings are two opposites. We are a spiritual being and we're also a physical being, which have very different proclivities and essences, and yet somehow God wills it that they should exist together, that they can exist together. And so it's interesting. I think when we think about this plague, there's something about this plague that I find very fascinating. Not that the other ones aren't, but there's something very fascinating about fire and water together. If anybody's been in the Aish HaTorah building in Jerusalem, it's called Aish, right? Fire. But you'll see that there's Jehuli. There's an art sculpture by a glass maker called Jehuli, and it's Aish. There's fire, and there's sort of nice yellows and oranges of sort of glass like fire, and then there's Mayim, there's water, and the blue coming down. It's just really lovely, and this the idea of the two opposites being able to exist together and being at peace. So I heard something else that was really interesting, that the hail, get this is great, the hail is formed from the fiery tears of the anguish of the Jewish people. That when the Jewish people was so enslaved, and it was so harsh, and it was so horrible, I don't even have words for it, that the tears that they shed were burning tears. It was so bad. It was not just little tears, it was like burning tears, and God saved those tears. We have a medrash that God saves the tears of the Jewish people, that our tears that are shed because we're Jews, or they're shed through our sojourn through life, that God saves our tears, and God feels our pain. Again, God is good, so he feels our pain and he saves our tears. And so I heard that this barad, this hail, water, fire, are the tears, the tears of the Jewish people coming down and smiting the Egyptians. So it's kind of interesting. So if we see there's peace between fire and water, so maybe we can see peace in our lives. We can see where sometimes seems to be so much animosity, or there seems to be so much hatred, or there seems to be so much, like it can never come together. There can never be peace. Maybe we have to just look at the hail, or look at a human body and say, there's peace there. We want peace. We want peace to exist outside, and we want peace to exist inside, right? So there should be peace within. Like even inside, when we have conflicting voices or we have tensions inside ourselves, like to get to a place of peace. That's what the Jewish people strive for. We strive for peace. Aaron HaKohen, Aaron, the brother of Moses, strives for peace. That's also his signature tune, is a man who strove for peace and inspired the people. So it's interesting, if you look at Moses and Aaron, they're a little bit antithetical also. Moses is this spiritual man who's up in the higher realms, right? So he's bringing godliness down. And Aaron's the man of the people, and he's trying to bring peace amongst the people, and he's trying to, make everybody like get on with each other, and he's bringing the physical up. So again, we have Moses and Aaron, who are perfect brothers in the sense that they have different strengths that they're bringing to their mission. They have a joint mission to bring the Jewish people out. Moses is bringing the spirituality down. Aaron's bringing the physicality up, and we're trying to bring the Jewish people out to have a relationship with God. So that's the whole thing. That's what's happening. And so I don't know if I have time for any more. Oh, it's so late. So anyway, I thought that just to think about the way in which the hail came down and the antithetical nature of these two elements that were opposites be able to be together and be at peace with each other. And so in our lives where we have things that seem to be at odds with each other, how do we create peace? And Aaron was the man who pursued peace, and Moses was the person who brought the spirituality down, that bring the essence of God down, and that's what we want to connect to. Just like when we hold on to the stick, and we want the stick to represent our holding on to Torah and holding on to God and holding on to what's real and what's true. So actually, if you just want to maybe throw this into the mix, like what's true, the word true is emet, and it's an aleph and a mem and a taf. Those are the three letters that make up the word emet. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet, mem is the middle letter of the alphabet, and taf is the last letter of the alphabet, and those are the letters that create truth, right? So it's the whole thing is true. And if you look at those letters, the way they're constructed, they're very solid. The aleph has two legs, the mem is like solid, and so all these letters are so solid, they're like grounded. Whereas sheker, which translates as falsehood, is the letters are very pointy, and they're not so solid. And they're all bunched up. The three letters that are bunched up together, sheker. Anyway, that's a by the way. So another point is in this week's Torah portion, Moshe and Aaron, we've talked about them. So they came, as we know, from parents whose names are named in this week's Torah portion. Their names are Yocheved and Amram. So as you remember, Amram, when he was fearful of the Pharaoh's decree, etc., he had to remarry. You have to have children. Like Pharaoh's only killing the baby boys, but you're causing no Jewish children to be born, so you're wrong. And so Amram defies Pharaoh, and he gets remarried and does it publicly. So we have an aspect of doing the right thing. Here's Amram, the man who stands up and does the right thing in defiance of Pharaoh. And Yocheved is one of the midwives who he marries, who is his wife, who is the mother of Aaron and Miriam and then Moshe. Miriam is one of the, Yocheved is one of the midwives who didn't kill the baby boys as told by Pharaoh. She defies the edict that she, as the midwife, was to kill the baby boys. We learned about that last week. So these children, Miriam and Aaron and Moses, are born to parents who are just and right and cling to that sense of what's right and do what's right, even when their lives are at stake, or even when they're fearful of humans, they're holding on to what they know is right to do, and that what God wants them to do, etc. So there is a precedent. So now when Aaron and Moses in this week's Torah portion are the leaders, and they're coming and they're standing up to Pharaoh, we get to get the names of their parents. When Moses was born, he was potential, right? He was born, as we mentioned, with all this soul just emanating out of his body. He was just like huge soul, but it was all potential. That he was born that way. That parents didn't do anything at that point. There was nothing that Yocheved and Amram did to help Moses be this way. He was born that way, right? So they're not named. There's just a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi, and they have this child. But now that these children are manifesting themselves and actualizing themselves and doing good in the world. And so now we know now we're told who the parents are, because the parents have a hand in helping their children hopefully become the best people they can be. We have a hand, and maybe we get that now. Their names are mentioned so that we can give them credit. They give them credit for being people who exemplified certain character traits and certain ways of being in the world and defying Pharaoh, such that their children would learn how to do it too, and then take that baton, take that in life. But to give credit to the parents, to give credit to Yocheved and Amram for the role that they play in being examples to their children of how to stand up to Pharaoh. And now we have Aaron and Moshe taking the lead, taking their lead and like going with it and being more. So now we hear their names. So I thought that was interesting. So one last point to bring out before we end is the idea that when the first three plagues are the plague of blood, all the water the Egyptians has turns into blood, the plague of the frogs, and the plague of lice that comes out of the ground. Like out of the ground come all these lice, all these little tiny bugs that attack everybody and everything. And because Moses had been saved by being put in the River Nile in a little boat. We talked about that last week, the little ark that he was placed in when he was cast into the River Nile, and then the daughter of Bacha comes and takes him. So water on some level saved him. And when he killed the Egyptian, we spoke about that, when he killed the Egyptian, he buried the Egyptian in the ground. So the ground was also something that hid this act that he had done. So in his gratitude, in his acknowledgement that water and dust or earth or whatever had helped him, he was not the one to bring about those plagues. He didn't take the stuff and hit the water or hit the ground because of this heightened sensitivity of gratitude, even though it's an inanimate object, water and earth. We are taught in many of the different commentators that he was told not to be the one to bring those plagues about because he had benefited from those elements. He benefited from the water and he benefited from the land, and so he shouldn't be the one to hit the land because they had benefited him. So there's a saying, actually I'm not sure if it's a Jewish saying, I think it's a Jewish saying, that you don't throw rocks into a well, meaning that if you drink from the well, then you don't throw a rock at the well because the well provided water for you. So there's the idea of always having hakaras hatov, recognizing the good, that if we do it for inanimate objects, how much more so should we do that for people and everything that people do for us, and to be really able to acknowledge that and to recognize the good that people do to us and receive that goodness and to thank people for the things that they do and really express that hakaras hatov. That gratitude is a lesson that we learn from Moses by not being the one to bring about the plagues that involve the land and the water. So at the end of the day, there's a lot in this week's Torah portion, obviously. There's the ability to understand that God manifests himself in the world in many different ways, and that the way in which he manifests himself, and that the mothers and fathers, our foremothers and foremothers, had a relationship with God, was with a certain aspect of God that had a certain name. And now, as we transition into the God who's going to manifest himself as the Redeemer of the Jewish people, and he's going to be in relationship, so then we're going to learn a different name. And it says that God appeared, so like obviously we don't see God, but this language of appearing and seeing and knowing and hearing, and like at what point do we get in our own lives or in our own minds to understand as if we see God, to know God? Like, do we know it? Can we really know it like we would know something that we see with our own two eyes? So that kind of like, think about that thought for the week. Like how real is God to you? How much do you feel like your inability to not see God it negatively affects your relationship with God? The interesting questions to think about. And then we launch into the plagues, the seven plagues, the first seven plagues that come up, and how they affect the land of Israel, the land of Egypt, and how they affect the people and what kind of plagues they are. I think we'll pick up next week some more about the plagues. So names and the importance of names and the importance of looking for a relationship, and Moses as the redeemer, Moses the man with circumcised lips. He's not able to talk because it's too rarefied. The ideas that the way he lives is too beyond this world, and so that he needed Aaron to be his partner, and they are partners. They're completely equal, even though they have different roles, and no one is more or worse than the other. And the idea of strengthening God's heart, God strengthening the heart of Pharaoh, or strengthening it such that he has free will, continues to have free will. Right. So I think that might be all I have to share with you today. And so, please feedback things that are interesting, things that you find interesting. But I think at the end of the day, to understand that God is behind everything and that God is good, even though it's hard sometimes for us to see that and to understand that like the unshakable faith that the mothers and fathers kind of put into our genome, our spiritual genome, hopefully can carry us, and to know that God's there and that people are there. And because sometimes people are God's conduit for providing comfort to others. So I hope you all have a good week.